You're listening to Innovators, the podcast from Harris Search Associates, where we speak with global leaders in education, research, engineering, and the health sciences, and ask them to share lessons learned as they continue to advance the frontiers of innovation and discovery. Today's podcast will be led by Joanne Fax, Senior Consultant.
Good afternoon. Today our topic is, are universities really training their students to meet the needs of employers? Our guest today is Dr. Christopher T. Jones, Corporate Vice President and President, Northrop Grumman Technology Services. As you can see, our focus today will be more on engineering, science, technology, and mathematics. So welcome, Chris, to Innovators.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about a topic that's critical for our company, important to me, and it's critical for our nation.
It's critical for the world. Global security is very, very important these days. So its timing is perfect. So we're going to start today with the question. The notion used to persist that students interning in engineering spend most of their time in more menial jobs and they're in a culture where they're learning the company, but they're not learning the skills necessary to work. This was an assumption for many years. It may be correct, it may not. So what is the work you and other firms provide student interns? And is there a process for the selection of interns to ensure diversity and gender equity?
Okay, that's a good question. And I always like to answer the questions up front. And so, and we'll address the selection of the interns first.
Okay.
And so what we do with interns is mirror the process that we have for all employees. And so we look at the interns essentially as part-time employees, not a separate category. And we strive to have diversity, inclusion, and engagement in all of our employees and all of our workplaces throughout the world. And in order to do that, we have a wide range of activities for recruiting, whether that's at universities or whether it's, in other places. And we do have goals and initiatives to have an inclusive and diverse workforce. And so if we look at specifically for interns, our recruiting is broad enough that we hire interns at about a 50% diverse rate. And so we do that through focusing on certain universities, through recruiting at certain conferences, and having initiatives where we link the efforts that we have even down to elementary and high school through universities to make sure we're increasing the number of STEM students and increasing the diversity of them. So we leverage all of those activities, and as a result, we do recruit a very diverse intern workforce. As far as what happens when the interns arrive at Northrop Grumman, and I can speak specifically to Northrop Grumman, but I think it's more true across at least our industry, is that the interns have very meaningful work. And in fact, we staff, assuming that we have a number of interns, and we hire hundreds and hundreds of thousands per year. And so we hire the interns and we staff based on them working on our programs. So they're not an add-on or a bolt-on to existing activities. They're a core part of the fabric of our workforce, and they're integral to us being successful. And in fact, we've moved towards an initiative we have is putting them in for clearances when they've been at Northrop Grumman for a couple of summers, and we do that for interns and co-ops. So we want them to have clearances so that they can work on some of our most innovative and most technically complex programs. And we're moving towards having them get ready for internships before they arrive. So we're in touch with our interns throughout the year when they're at college. And we tell them which tools they need to be knowledgeable on. And some of them have taken the initiative to do a little bit of studying before they arrive. And so not only do we put them in for clearances and we put them in a place to be successful workplace, we're also making sure they have the tools and are able to do so. And so now we do not look at the interns as, somewhat, additional workforce. They're an integral part of our workforce. We expect a lot out of them, and they expect a lot out of us.
I love the idea of setting them up for clearances and other things so they're even more ready to be available for the workforce. Now, I was looking at some of your materials, and it looks like you hire about 2,000 interns per year, and you just said of that you have about a 50% rate of hire. So you hire many university graduates, and I'm assuming some of these are undergrad, some of these are grad. So how do you assess those graduates' readiness for success in the world of work? And has that evaluation changed over time? Maybe because you've had different needs or different perspectives, or the job market is changing.
Okay, and that's a good question. And just to clarify, for our interns, and it's also true for our full-time hires, over 50% that we hire is diverse. And so that's, we're very proud of that, and that's resulting in a very diverse workforce within Northrop Grumman.
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
not to cut you off, Chris, but I saw on your website that you have many best top 50 awards for military, LGBT, equality, diversity, disability, and minority. And these are all very recent. So one day maybe we'll talk about how you made a culture that was able to grasp and welcome and employ all of these different diverse groups, but that's a later discussion. I just wanted it noted for our audience.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very proud of that, and look forward to that. Having that discussion, because it is important to us, and it's not a coincidence that as the diversity in our company has increased over time, the performance of our company has improved over time as well. But again, we'll table that for another discussion. And so back to your question on, students and success of them. If we're looking at students that are in leading universities, regardless of their major, and again, we're talking more about technical and scientists, but we really actively try and engage on an individual student level to make sure they're a success. And even though I'm in charge of a relatively large organization, about 14,000 people located globally, at the end of each summer, I sit down with the interns and get feedback on their experiences at Northrop Grumman, things we could do better for them as their internship, and things we could do better for early career individuals. I meet with mid and later career folks as well, but I take the time to meet with the interviews and with the interns. And we also ask them to take a survey. So as the interns are here, we ask them to take a survey and get feedback on the internships. And then we also have employee surveys for our full-time employees, and we look at those as well, and we get feedback on early career individuals and make sure that we're applying the lessons learned. And then finally, for early career individuals in our company, right, so new graduates, but as well as other employees, we have a number of programs, including rotation programs, mentoring programs, and employee resource groups, where each of the employees can connect with either their peers or somebody senior to help them assimilate, give them career guidance, and help them navigate their career and perform the best for Northrop Grumman.
This sounds wonderful, because it sounds like you have a continuous quality assessment of your internship programs to make sure that the students are ready for the workforce. I'm going to jump over to co-op programs. Universities such as Georgia Tech, for instance, required students to co-op, usually in their junior year, with a firm where the students' education and training were refined. Students usually give the co-op experience very high marks. How do you rate the co-op in terms of how its productivity and its importance to the students?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm going to assume again as a coincidence you picked an example from a school that I attended, but maybe that wasn't a coincidence.
We'll let it lay out there.
So I'll throw out a go Yellow Jackets before I answer this question.
That's fine.
But to answer your question, and I look at co-op programs similar to internships, so I'll answer the question more broadly. And so having students, even in high school, because we have interns from high school, so we have some interns that are in high school that work at our facility. So whether it's through an internship or whether it's through a co-op, having students work while they're at school and giving them the ability to understand the workforce, I think is critical for them, and it's critical for companies like us. And I'll start why it's important for them. So there's a number of reasons why, so not in any particular order. It gives them the ability to apply what they're learning, and it makes what they're learning more real. It gives them a sense of what it would take to be successful in the workplace. What it takes to be successful there is slightly different than what it takes to be successful in an academic setting, or maybe in a job that they would have had elsewhere. If they're thinking about graduate school, it gives them some insight into what would be useful from a graduate level, what they like and what they don't like, and from a career standpoint, what the impact would be where they pursue a graduate degree. I often get a question about for folks in engineering and science, whether they should get a master's degree in engineering and science or maybe get an MBA or a business degree. And so working actually helps them. It's also true, and all the people that have transitioned from college to workforce understand there's a lot of things that's required to be successful that aren't taught in college. And so exposing the students and the young professionals to all of the aspects that are important, whether it's working in a team, whether it's communication, even some of the office politics and understanding company culture, they can get a leg up on that, and that's critical for them as well. So regardless of how they get that experience, whether it's through a co-op or whether it's through an intern, I think all of that is important. And then finally, for the student, sometimes it's hard when you're just taking classes to really understand really what you want to do and what you like doing and what you don't like. You may have an idea of that, but until you actually do it and until you're actually in that environment, sometimes it's not as clear. And so again, this gives the students an opportunity to really understand the type of work they'll like, the type of work environment they'll like, the type of culture that they'll like, as they begin to navigate their career.
Okay, well, we can't have a discussion like this without talking about STEM. So it is a major area and concern and emphasis for universities, and everything from their teacher education programs to engineering, science, to health professions. Just how important is that American colleges and universities graduate more students in the STEM fields? And are you finding that these STEM students are hired that actually have an ability and an opportunity to move up in their careers to upper level jobs? Are you finding not only they're getting in the door, but are they moving ahead? And do you still have to recruit some STEM students from overseas through other means to have a broad enough perspective for the company's needs?
When I was at college at Georgia Tech, I had a professor that said there'd be one question on the final exam. And so we got there and there was one question with 12 parts. So I appreciate it. So there's a lot in that question. So I'll try and, cover it. And starting with STEM, just start with that and the need for that. And then we can talk about some of the subsequent aspects of the question. And so obviously it's very critical that, our country, and we'll stick specifically with our country, generates the amount of STEM talent required for us to move forward. And you can look at various studies. We won't get into specific numbers. We could quote them. But it's clear to everyone that the world is becoming more technically and technologically complex. And I kind of use examples, right? We can't work on our cars anymore. I can't fix my car. There's so much software in it. It'd be very difficult for me to fix it. I buy a toaster. Even a toaster now has software in it, right? And can link to the internet. Now, those are two, small examples of how the world's just becoming more complicated. If you look at the toys, I was just looking at toys I was going to buy my son, and the options of unmanned aerial vehicles and robotics and things that are linked to internet just to the toy. He's 10 years old. And my 10-year-old son is writing software code at the command line in languages that didn't exist until I was 30 years old. And so the world is becoming a lot more complicated. And for our country to move forward, whether it's defense or commercial products, we need, STEM talent. If you look at the large companies and we think about from a technology standpoint or innovation, whether that's IT companies like Google or commercial products like Apple or defense companies like Northrop Grumman, we all need the same talent. And there are so many openings. And, my fear is that we don't generate enough talent, and it's going to stifle our ability to grow as a country. Obviously, it has a big impact on our ability to defend the country, and that's the business we're in. It's a complicating factor for companies like ours because we can't hire folks from overseas. So we can't hire folks that can't get a clearance. So given the shortage of some of the talent and the fierce competition for it, it's an additional challenge for companies in our industry because we need folks that can get a clearance. And so that pool is even smaller. And so there's no question there's a need, either if you look at it from a country standpoint, but also for our industry. The colleges and universities, are doing a good job. They have budget constraints and they have constraints as well. But I would rate that they're doing a good job. We just need more. And so the challenge for us as a nation is, I think, less about the college system, right? More about encouraging more people to actually choose STEM fields. And so again, getting back to the work we're doing as a company and what I've been focused on personally, getting back into the high schools and elementary schools to encourage more people to join STEM fields, and also making sure that all people have that. And so there's parts of our segments of our population, there's a disproportionately low number of students in STEM. And so we're not in a position, the country, where we can discount any segment of our population. We need to include all of them. And so making sure that as many students as possible have the opportunity to be successful in STEM fields. If we can do that, then that'll increase the throughput into the colleges and universities. And again, they're doing a good job with the talent that's coming out and making sure they're ready for companies like Northrop Grumman. If you look at the students that are being produced, I think they're phenomenal. So we just need more of them.
I was just thinking, as you talked about increasing the pipeline, two of my favorite commercials right now on TV is the one with Molly, where she's innovative from a child all the way up to where she's in a company. And then there's another one with a group of young women. I think they're elementary school age, that are doing science projects and things of that nature. So if we can continue to increase our efforts, not only through education, but visibility, then the pipeline might broaden more for us. So my final question to you today is, do you have any creative ideas on what you'd like to do, say, from a perspective of if you were a dean or a school, or if you were trying to encourage more students to enter the field? What words of wisdom can you leave us with in terms of educating our future generations for these fields?
So that's a good question. So one is, I don't know that I want one of those, the dean of engineering or the president of school. Those are very hard jobs. Hats off to them. Given everything that happens on our campuses, given that, a lot of times they're a reflection of what's going on in society. So they have to manage all of that, and along with everything it takes to run these large organizations, along with setting the curriculum and the specific of the question. So again, I think, overall, they're doing a really good job, and I appreciate that. It's not an easy job. So to answer your question, I'd really say maybe just a couple things, and I don't know that I'd change anything, but I'd continue on the path we're on. And so one is what I talked about before, engaging with young people, like down to the at least elementary school level, below middle school, on STEM, and getting them excited about it. If you go back to the 60s with the race for space and the race to the moon, there was a lot of excitement, being an engineer and being a scientist nationally. It came up, we now have, colloquialisms and phrases, I'm not a rocket scientist, that came from that era. And that excitement embraced the nation, and a lot of people wanted to get into engineering and science. And so I think the first answer to your question, what could we do, is really work on the pipeline at a young age and make sure that we're getting people excited about the STEM fields. And we're including all people. So you mentioned the commercials where there's, girls and young women. And, we know that, there's challenges. They get excited, and then for reasons, society and other ones, they kind of drop out of the STEM and change to other majors. So, leveraging off the comment you made, I think that's an area to focus on. But there's, other disadvantaged groups, minorities, and then even and economic, because being able to get a degree now is hard economically for a large portion of our population. They have degrees, they can't afford it, and that's another issue as well. So I think working on the pipeline at an early age, going up through elementary, middle school, and high school, both with the student and with the teachers and faculty in the schools, and making sure the teachers are equipped to keep the students excited and to train them. Technology changes rapidly, so making sure we're helping all of us, make sure the teachers have the tools and capability and knowledge that they need to make sure that the pipeline's robust. So I'd say that's one, and then two, specific to college, university level. And I'd say this, 2 and 4 year college, because for some of our fields, especially in the IT, 2-year degrees are good. And sometimes we don't mention that as much as we could. Again, there's large parts of our population, and especially geographically, throughout the United States, where 2-year college and enough certificates in IT and cloud and cyber are very attractive. So if you look at 2 and 4 year degrees in schools, continuing the partnerships that we've built, I would say, is a second answer of what I would emphasize. And so I discussed that a bit, the partnership between industry and universities and colleges, whether that's sitting on boards, whether that's helping with their curriculum, whether that's, again, making sure appropriate funding is there for the schools, partnering on research. We have programs where we're swapping professors, and faculty, so they come to Northrop Grumman, we're sending a Northrop Grumman person to the faculties. All of that collection is really kind of doubling down on the partnerships. They can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. There is no one entity that can, help us get to where we need to be. And so really emphasizing partnerships and working together. And so that would be the second thing I would emphasize.
Well, Chris, we can't thank you enough for our discussion today. This has been so enlightening and engaging, and I've enjoyed it so much, and I know our audience will too. So we thank you and Northrop Grumman for taking the opportunity to be a part of Innovators, and wish you well.
Thanks, Joanne, and thanks for the opportunity as well.
Thank you for listening to Innovators, a production of Harris Search Associates. We'll have more insightful conversations with global thought leaders to follow.